Okay, welcome back to RCM Tech Talk. John Williamson and Francis Burton. Today we're going to drill into insurance AR issues. So this is really everything that happens after the payer is accepting the claim. So getting the claim accepted, that's a biller's job. From that day forward, it's in the AR department. So we're going to focus on the insurance side of this. So self-pay and patient balance come separately, but this is where you're going to have the widest level of variance in what's happening. You're probably going to have the most staffing. You're probably going to have the biggest problems. Usually insurance AR is the very first place people look when there is sort of a revenue cycle problem. Half the time, if a new revenue cycle director is showing up, it's because there's an insurance AR problem, and that resulted in the last person sort of not sticking around. So we're going to get in the details of this. Francis, big picture, insurance AR, what are some important things that revenue cycle directors should be paying attention to?
Well, they need to see, how old is their AR in the insurance side, and you want to know how that's being worked. Who's working the denied ones and who's working the ones that fell through a black hole. Those are the two top ways of approaching it.
Right. So this one has plenty of data. You're going to be probably looking at this all the time. Everyone looks at AR reports all the time. But some of the most important things you would want to walk into these discussions with is a good aging volume by payer and age tier. So oftentimes, if you roll these things up, you don't see the granularity. So whether you can run this directly in your EHR or you're going to create a pivot table or whatever you need to do, you need to understand per payer, where is my problem? Because there's always a cluster of problems and there's always going to be problem payers, and you're going to be able to spot that if you group these things together. So that's important. The next is the denial volume by payer and type. So obviously denials, there are several different responses and sometimes different people responsible for taking action, whether it's sort of clinical in nature or administrative in nature, or you're just going to have to write it off. These are the kinds of things that you need to understand by both payer and type as well. Again, you're going to have a pattern in there. So these kinds of reports that you will have run and become familiar with ahead of time are going to help you have a more educated conversation when you're talking to folks. So, AR starts even before there's a response. So maybe jump in, Francis, sort of from the interview topics. What do we want to have the revenue cycle director cover with the staff members in the AR department?
Well, I would want to know, how are you dividing up insurance outstanding? Are you dividing it among certain number of people to work by payer groups or by provider? If you have multi-specialty, then is it by specialty because that particular person knows more about modifiers for that service? Or are you doing it, just everybody take a certain number of accounts? You really want, I would want to know, are you prioritizing? How are you prioritizing these? Are you doing it by the ones that's going to hit timely filing, running out of, that is going to expire soon? Or are you doing it by high dollar? What is your process for prioritizing these? If you don't have enough hours in a day to do it all, then how are you picking which ones to do? I would want to know that. The denial identification, I would definitely want to know the top 10. Always you're going to see coverage terminated, coverage not in effect. And then you have the timely filing. Those are the two common ones. Are you dividing it to where the people that have to make contact back to the front on the insurance side or call the patient? That's one team of people. Or are you doing it, again, by another method, by payer? The other thing that is so important that you do is walk into the call center, right, and find out what kind of phone calls are being made to payers. Are you being put on hold? And are they typically for, unresponded claims, or is it because you're trying to prove medical necessity? What kind of outgoing calls are being made?
Yeah, those are good points. One thing that I've seen a number of times is where there are several ways. For example, let's say it's been 25 days, you don't have a response yet, so you don't know what's going on. there are ways other than calling to go find that information out, at least superficial level information, whether it's going, through the Availities of the world or your clearinghouse or the payer portal that they've given you access to. It's important that the staff members, have access to that, know how to access it, know how to search it, to get answers to things that they can get answers to without having to go make a phone call. Everyone hates making the phone call. And then if you're making the phone call, typically you can get sort of a status or information on up to 3 claims. That's sort of the common number. Some will allow more. So you want to batch your questions. So don't call and ask about one claim when there are other claims you could be asking about. If you're going to make a phone call, do 3 claims at a time. Make sure you're getting information on multiple claims every single phone call so that if you have to go through the whole time process, it's warranted. The other thing is, this is, of course, is an area that a lot of folks outsource. But one of the challenges that you're going to face, and this applies to in-house and outsource, is what are the sort of the sequence of questions that should be asked when you do call. So when you find out a piece of information, there's usually another follow-up question that should be asked that may be a little bit more specific and may not be obvious to a new rep or an outsourced rep. You're going to want to almost create the tree of conversation so that you know what should the follow-up question be if they tell you X or Y or Z. So sort of almost structuring what the note is going to be that's going to get typed into the system by forcing your reps to ask and get answers to certain questions is going to improve the quality of the conversation and the call. And then hopefully you've batched those together so you get more done faster and you don't have to make a second call and you don't do the wrong thing as a follow-up. That's a really sort of good point of leverage to help you get more out of that conversation that your rep is having with the insurance rep.